Welcome back to Living for His Glory podcast. I'm here with an old mentor of mine, TJ Classen. TJ, he was the youth pastor at my old church down here in Lexington, Kentucky. He's moved over to Nebraska now, right?
Yep. Yeah. Down in Omaha, Nebraska now.
Omaha, Nebraska. Back to you. You're from there, aren't you? Yep.
Yeah. I was born here and then I had moved away after freshman year of high school to like the Kansas City area. So it's coming back home, have some family roots here, which has been really fun. So,
Yeah. Hometown hero. He came back and smelled the fresh air. And I'm like, ah, man, back when I was a young man.
exactly.
But he's just been a light in my life, and I've missed him in the year that he's been gone. But he's awesome. He inspired me. He inspired the kids that he pastored back here. I'm sure he's been an inspiration last year to the kids over there in Omaha, Nebraska. I'm really excited for this episode. I'm sure it's going to be a fantastic conversation as always. TJ is he's just the man. I can't wait for you guys to see that for yourselves. How
Thanks.
are you?
Appreciate it.
Oh, yeah. How are you?
I'm doing good. Yep. We are in the middle of summer life with ministry and family. And so it's always a fun little change of pace. Some weeks are busier, some weeks are chiller. And so it's, yeah, enjoying life right now. It's been a good start halfway through our summer.
That's awesome. That's really cool, man. I touched with you a little bit before we got started, just what we'll be talking about. We're big on stories here. So I'm just curious what's yours? What do you want to talk about? I'm sure you got a lot of good ones, especially moving around the way that you have.
Yeah, it's been fun. I've gotten to see, yeah, God just through a lot of different circumstances and experiences. And I think it's fun. I feel like a lot of my stories are like able to look back and be like, oh, I totally see how God was involved now or what he was doing back then. It's a lot of times you don't feel it in the moment. There's a lot of like, why am I moving here? Or why am I, yeah, whatever, not having success with this? And then you get to look back 5 years later and you're like, oh, God was totally preparing me for X by me going through that. I just had no idea. So, yeah, it's fun to be able to look back at many different experiences and just be able to have that confidence like, all right, God's been walking with me my whole life and he's always been in control and I can trust him now even more because of how I've learned to trust him in the past.
Yeah. What's one thing that you've been looking back on and you're like, oh, like I didn't see it there, but like trusting God, like I was able to get this, like my life is infinitely better. He gifted me this through this.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's, when I think through my life and those experiences, there's three probably main ones that stick out and that I just still hold to. And I can look back and be like, okay, these are like three moments that I know like God was involved or God was directing things. First was when I was like, so when I moved from Omaha, Nebraska to Kansas City when I was a sophomore going into sophomore year of high school, it was the first time like I grew up. I'm a pastor's kid. So like faith has always been a part of my life and the church has always been a part of my life. And for me, that's been a blessing. I'm so blessed to have a dad who's a great example of a godly leader. And so I've always had a love for the church. I've felt like from an early age, I always had this feeling of I want to work in the church. Like I love the church. And going through like middle school was really a chance for me to be like, okay, am I just going to be a pastor's kid? That's why I do these things. Or is this why I own faith? And so I didn't have any friends that were really strong Christians at all. So all my friends in middle school are starting to be like, I don't know if we really do this church stuff. And it was a chance for me to be like, okay, do I really want to do this? Or am I just doing this because I feel like I'm supposed to do this? And really grounding my faith and no, like this is what I, as just TJ, believe. And I feel like it's my job to be a light to my friends who are not as confident in that. And so getting to see like friends, inviting them to church, getting to even lead some of them to like their own relationship in Christ, even in middle school, was just like, this is what I'm here to do. This is what I love to do, is help people meet Jesus. And when I moved after freshman year, when I moved to Kansas City, I kind of lost all of this relational equity that had built up like in my school and in my community. Like people knew that like I was genuine in my faith and it was my own thing. And I feel like when I moved to this small town outside of Kansas City, like from day one, it was just like, oh, this is just the new pastor's kid. So of course he's going to be like this perfect goody two shoe kid. And I didn't feel like I had the chance to ever establish, yes, I'm a pastor's kid. Yes, I do these things, but it's because like I genuinely care about people and because I have my own faith. I just always felt like I was labeled as, oh, there's this new holy kid coming into town. And again, it was a small town. So everybody knew who I was before I even moved there. And so I really went through this time of feeling like, God, why did you pull me out of this school in Omaha where I had so much influence, where I felt like I was getting to see people and my friends like come to meet Jesus? And you put me into this new environment where I feel like there's just this brick wall that I'm never breaking through. No one's giving me a chance to like just get to know me. It feels like they've all already made assumptions about who I am before I even got there. And so the end of high school was tough for me because I kind of was through this time where I felt like, what am I doing? Like, I don't feel like I'm being a light necessarily in my school. I don't feel like I'm seeing tangible evidence of my Christian influence, if that makes sense. And so I just had this time where I was like, God, why would you pull me from where I had so much influence and put me somewhere where I have no influence? And I went to this summer camp as a camper in the middle of that experience. And I had a lot of my friends back in Nebraska who would still text me, still call me, who weren't doing well and were, dude, if you were here, like I would have had someone to take me to church, or I would have had someone to talk to about this stuff. And I was carrying like all this weight of it was my job to save these people. And I went to this camp and I didn't have my phone. And one of my friends was going through something pretty tough. There were some pretty extreme things going on to the point where our last conversation before I went to camp, I was at camp being like, I don't know what's going to be there when I get back from camp. And it was really stressing me out. And I felt the first time God talked to me, and it's not your job to save people. Like, I love your friends even more than you love your friends. And it was just this releasing of, can I learn to trust that God is working in other people's lives just as much as I know that he's working in my life? And so really like this weight got off my shoulder of, I think I was just carrying other people's burdens just because I cared about them. I wanted them to know who Jesus was, but I was putting so much weight on that's, if they don't, then that's on me. And God was like, I love these people even more than you do. So be faithful, be a great witness to the people during the time that you have with them, but also know like times when you're going to move on. And that's been true. And even like my ministry life now, I can look back, like I've been at 3 different churches so far in my ministry life. I always was like, I never want to ever leave a church. Like I want to be at the same church forever. And I think there's great hearts in that, but there's times where it's like, God's like, guess what? I love those kids that you're taking care of even more than you do. So can you trust that if I'm going to take you somewhere else, that I'm going to, one, take care of those people that you left? Doesn't mean I like give up on them, but it's like, I just have to trust I'm not there in the same way. And then he's also going to put me somewhere where he has a plan for me in that place. And so I think he used that season of my life where I felt like I had these 3 years where I was unproductive, so to speak. And what I think he was teaching me is it's not on me to save everybody. I'm just called to be a witness wherever I'm at. And I trust that God's in charge. God's the one who's going to change people's hearts. He just gets to use me to be a light to him. And so I think that was a really big learning experience. And that's now influenced just even how I live as an adult and how I do ministry and even not ministry, but just how I engage with people like in the community. Yes, I care about people. I really want what's best for them. But at the end of the day, I can go to bed and put my head on the pillow and know God's totally in control and God cares about that person even more than I do. So I'm just going to trust that he's got a plan for their life. And I'm just called to be faithful with what time and energy he's given me. So
I'm curious, this might be a little bit personal for me,
that's
just
okay.
the curiosity wise. How did
Yeah.
that lesson feed into when you had to leave for Omaha after being here for, you were here for 5 years?
5 years. Yeah. Yeah. Honestly, the exact same that it was when I actually left my first ministry job to go to Lexington. My first ministry job was in Colorado Springs, was at this church, absolutely loved it. I told myself part of my story is like I never had a good youth pastor ever. All 4 years, partly because I moved in the middle of high school. Then the church that I moved to, I had a youth pastor for 1 year, then he left. Then we went a year with no youth pastor. And then I had another youth pastor my senior year who was actually great. But I was like, at that point, I was a senior and I was like, hey, dude, I'm going to college. I'm out of here. I'm done with this. But he was a great guy, honestly.
You changed that narrative for me. So I didn't like and before TJ Classen, I was in the same boat. You changed
Yeah,
it. You changed that narrative for me when I was in high school.
I appreciate that. And I think that's as much as I wish I would have been able to have some of these really cool high school youth group experiences. I do feel like it was God being like, hey, I'm just instilling in you this desire to do that for someone else because you didn't get to have it. And I know how much it would have been beneficial. So I love hearing that I have gotten to do that for people because that's why I do youth ministry is I want to be able to help students have just an awesome, encouraging high school experience. So to go back, so I thought, I was like, I will never, ever leave a church without being there like at least 3 years minimum. And even then, I would feel terrible about it because I've just been like, sometimes it feels like you can do more harm than good if you're only investing in someone's life and then you pick up and leave. It's just hard. And I've seen that on the receiving end. So I'd been at this church in Colorado for 2 years and I got the call to come have an opportunity to work at the church in Lexington. Obviously, my dad was at that church and we have a really great relationship. And it was a really cool opportunity to be like, hey, this is ever a chance to do ministry together. This is like the only chance we'll probably have just in our ages. And he probably won't be ever going to a different church. And I, at this point where I'm still new in ministry, but I remember they called me the first time and I was like, no, like I can't do it because I haven't been at this church 3 years. I can't leave. I've only been here 2 years. So I actually just, the first two times that the church in Lexington called me, I was like, if you would call me a year later, I'd say yes, but I just can't do it. And God was working on my heart of like eventually being like, okay, I had this 3 year rule. And whose rule was that? Was that God's rule or was that my rule? That was my rule. I think my heart was in a good place. I think God was like, I love that you're trying to have roots, but also I'm shutting down something that feels like a really cool God opportunity just because I have this 3 year rule. And so I really went through this. If I feel like God is calling me to go to this church in Lexington, then I've got to really trust that He's got a plan for this church here in Colorado Springs, and that He wouldn't call me somewhere if He didn't already, again, care about the kids here even more than I did and have a plan for what He wants to do in their lives there. And yeah, I think it was just a good releasing of, again, I care about people. I want things to go well, but sometimes this pressure is like, is this TJ's youth group or is this TJ getting to lead the church's youth group? And being able to release that a little bit and be like, it can have my DNA. I do get to be the leader, and that's a great privilege. But at the end of the day, this is God's church. These are God's students in His ministry, and I've been called to be faithful for the time, and that time won't be forever. He'll call me to something else, or something will come up that for my family, I might need to make a transition. And so I just have to trust like He's in charge of those students, and He loves you guys, and He's the one who is spiritually growing you. Like I get to be a sounding board or a whatever the word would be, like a vessel of how that influence can be given at times. But if I'm the one changing your life, then I'm doing it wrong. And so my job is to point you to Jesus. And then the beauty is if I have to leave, I get to keep pointing you to Jesus just from afar. But He's the one who's in your life and who's working, and the one that I'm hoping you learn how to trust, because I won't be in everyone's life forever. Even with students, like at the most I would get 7 years with you, but then you're still going to college. And yeah, it would have been nice if we're in person, we can connect when you come back home, but there's still a level of every year I've got to send a whole new class out and be like, my influence on you now lessens and I'm here for you, but you go spread your wings. And so I think that lesson has helped me also to figure out, like, when those kids are seniors, how do I let them go and be like, you weren't mine to save, but I'm here to just love on you and invest in you, and I'm always here for you, kind of thing.
Yeah, you came into my life as I was coming into high school. And so I'm like your first class that you had to like really let go. How
Yeah, yeah.
I'm curious because like I remember graduating, you gave me that graduation gift, which I still use by the way. You were right. I use that. I very much use that.
Shout out to the
And
laundry bags.
oh yeah, I had my name on and everything. And just, I remember freshman year was tough, and you were still around during my freshman year, still around Lexington.
Hmm.
I'd be like, TJ, this is all this, and I've got so much going on. It's tough. And so I'm just curious, what was that like, just in terms of letting us go? Because there's a lot of things maybe people don't have experience like with just you in the mentorship, pastorship role,
Yeah.
letting the
Yeah.
kids go and as they graduate, but just letting, you know, people go as they come and go in life and different things. What was that like? How did you deal with that?
Yeah. Honestly, is students are still engaged with their faith at some level, then watching you have to go through some of the more harder things is actually, fun's the wrong word, but like it's exciting because it's like, yeah, man, like you are doing life now and you're seeing how your faith is going to influence all these hard things that you go through. And so it's almost this weird, like, it's almost encouraging, even though I know that for you it's hard and you're going through hard things, but I get to, the fact that you're still calling me is encouraging because it's like you still value spiritual input into these decisions. And so I think it's harder when you see those students that like just totally leave and they don't have anything to do with their faith, and you just see that they get overwhelmed by the world and they just walk away from that. And again, even then though, how do I process that? Is I think I go back to those lessons I learned in high school when I had a lot of my friends that did the same, and I was carrying the weight of that, and it was ruining my own life, and it was almost ruining my own faith of, God, why are you letting this happen to my friends? And it was like, yeah, this chance to learn, like, God is in charge of other people's lives as much as he is in mine. And I don't have the power to save people. And if you are being saved through TJ, then it's also not really going to work either. So it still breaks my heart anytime I see anyone, but students or just people that are walking away from the Lord. It breaks your heart because you want better for them, that they're just searching for answers and they don't know that a relationship with Jesus is that answer. And so you want that for them. But for those of you who still at least hold on to your faith in those things, then it's fun to watch you grow as an adult and have to go through some hard things. And yeah, you're not in high school anymore. This is real. You're on your own. You've got people that, yeah, you don't have your same support system where, even if you have a bad coach in high school, it's like, yeah, but you got your family who hypes you up. You got your friends who hype you up. It's like you go out on your own and you don't have anyone to hype you up. And you really got to be like, okay, does God have a plan for me or not? And to watch students freshman year, for a lot of them, figure out, do I trust God has a plan for my life, is really fun. I enjoy seeing that because I remember being there and I remember how formative it was for my faith, which I think for me, it was another kind of huge time, was when I was in college. I went and worked for actually 2 summers. I worked all summer at summer camp. And I grew up as a pastor's kid. I've always really had a faith of my own and I've known the Bible. I feel like I knew so much about faith, but then you go and you work at a summer camp where you just get like physically exhausted and spiritually exhausted. And it was like the first time I felt like a Holy Spirit like sustaining me physically. Okay, like I know he's there. I know God will have my back, but then to be in a cabin in charge of 12 middle school boys for 2 weeks, like by day 3, you were like, I kind of want to quit tomorrow. And to wake up and have the Holy Spirit just give you this energy that you're like, I just had another great day. I think I might quit tomorrow because I'm so exhausted, but today was great. And then that just happens every day. And then all of a sudden you realize, oh, you know what? I think I'm having great days because God's literally carrying me through this. And if I'm faithful to just invest in people, he is faithful to fill me with the energy that I need to do that. And so I think, yeah, it's just fun to see you guys start to get to have some of those experiences and know that's why these first college age years are so fun, because you really start figuring out who you are and how much you trust what God's doing in your life. And
Oh yeah. I'm curious. Yeah, I know you have a brother. Are you, I forget, are you the older brother or are you the younger brother?
yep, yeah, I'm a year and a half older.
You're the older brother. Okay, that checks out because Like from everything that I'm hearing, it's really cool to hear your story, especially from you. I've heard you preach. I've
Yeah.
been with you and whatever, but especially just hearing all the background knowledge of TJ, I'm like, ooh, okay. So that's where this comes from. What I've noticed in my own life as I've continued to develop, I've been in college for 2 years, been out of your wing for
hmm
2 years, and what I've seen in myself is I'm the big brother too in my family, and like
Yep.
me and you, we really connect because me and you both like being a big brother. Like from everything that
Yeah.
it sounded like from you with this camp you're talking about, and you've been in the youth ministry business for much longer than most people ever have been. Like the average youth pastor is last what, like 5 years before moving up? Is that right?
Yeah.
You,
And the average, sadly, like at a church right now is a year and a half. So,
yeah, you're 30 now, still
yeah.
youth pastor.
Yeah. It's been how long? 9 years, I think, of full time ministry. And so, yeah.
Yeah, you're above average.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll
You're
take
above
it. Thanks. That's what I shoot for. Just above average.
Is there like this element of, man, I get to these kids, it's not just something that like, okay, like, it was like, okay, I'm young, I can connect with them better than somebody else can. Sure, but now you're 30 trying to connect to 14-year-olds, maybe
Yeah.
even younger on some occasions.
Yeah.
But you're still able to do that, I imagine, fairly well. And I don't think much has changed in the last year since I've seen you. Like, just this aspect of I love being a big brother and I love being a mentor, not just like
Mm,
head of the church almost, and I know that that's the Catholic word for it, father, but it's
yeah.
almost can almost seem like a father figure. But as a youth pastor, it almost felt like a big brother, at least for me when I had you.
Yeah.
It almost felt like I finally had a big brother I could go to. There's not very many people that's
Yeah.
been that for me or are allowed to be that for me because I've always been the big brother. And you talked a lot about responsibility, like even in high school and middle
Mm,
school, texting your friends, helping them through the tough times. Hey, I've got the responsibility to be there for you, to show up for
hmm
you, which are not
hmm
bad things. We're supposed to show up for
Yep.
people, but I know a struggle. Like I relate to you big time about the my responsibility is to help, I guess, save you.
Yeah.
101 is like we know we
Yep.
it's hard to tell yourself that. It's easy to know it and it's hard to understand it because you do almost feel that responsibility and
Yeah.
times when you feel like you failed somebody else, because I'm sure
hmm
there are times where you're like I didn't show up for that person the best way that I maybe could have, and it
hmm
caused this and this to happen to them and they felt these ways about me, about life, and they felt abandoned or whatever, and it feels like you completely just let them down. But what you're talking about, it's all God anyways. And God loves them more than you ever could. And so I imagine it's just kind of occurring to me, you don't get the one-on-one connection with me too much anymore with the other kids that you had out over here in Lexington.
hmm
But not only the good impact that you made, but also it's, oh, maybe I didn't do this the best way that I could have, or I didn't give them all I could have given them, but still trusting whether the good or bad, the good impact or the even bad impact, that God still has that plan for them and it's still working in their lives.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what you have to rely on. Otherwise, you've never done enough. Like,
Mhm.
I think yeah, it'd be so easy to, and I think sometimes people in ministry, that's why they can burn themselves out, is because you have all this pressure of, I need to be enough for everybody. And you just literally can't. And so learning how to be able to release the people that you love to the will of God and know you are still responsible for the time that you have, and God's given you these people that you have influence with, and so you need to steward it well. But yeah, if you can't also trust him in the process, you will be, yeah, devastated because yeah, you can never do enough, and you aren't guaranteed that you're going to be in that person's life for 15 years. You might get two, and then something, they move, you move, something crazy happens. So you've just got to be faithful with what's in front of you, day by day, year by year. Okay, this is my crew this year that I'm investing in, and that's what I got to focus on. So,
The encountering people that you want to help more than they want to be helped,
hmm.
What does that look like? Because that's something that I've struggled with a lot growing up,
Hmm.
something I've worked a lot through as I've gotten older. What does that look like for it to be like, man, I want this for you. I know what good this could be in your life, but
Hmm.
you don't want it for you.
I think where I see all of this the most too in my own life was when I was in college. Like I worked at a snowboard shop for the whole time I was in college, which if me was one of my favorite jobs for many reasons. But yeah, if you know anything about snowboard culture, I was the only one in the shop who was in Bible school and even knew what a Bible school was. Let's just say it that way. But it was so fun to be able to like amidst just working retail and selling snowboards and gear, like to then talk about also like why I'm at a Bible school and like why I feel like I have this calling on my life and why I don't go and drink with them on a Friday night or why I don't want to smoke weed while I'm on break. And it wasn't like me, oh, because the Bible says I can't. It was like, oh, because I feel like I have this purpose for my life and I'm not looking to fulfill it with these things. I would rather go study on a Friday night because I actually have a big test in the morning. And I don't know, it was just like this chance to show them what a life that lives by the scriptures looks like, but not like me being like, oh, I wish I could, but I can't because the Bible says not. It was like this confidence of that's just not what I do because I feel like I have purpose and I know what God wants for me. And like it was this appealing, oh, there's something different about you. We want to learn like why you do what you do. And so I feel like for me, a phrase I heard when I was a high school at summer camp was this phrase, you might be the only Bible that someone ever reads. And that hit me so hard of, yeah, there are people who they don't even know that they need faith. They're not going to open the Bible, but them looking at your life shows them who God is. And yeah, just your representation of how you carry yourself, the decisions that you make, that might be someone's only, like I might have been the only Christian that any of those people at the snowboard shop knew. And so it was my job to get to demonstrate what a true follower of Jesus looks like, knowing that one day they're going to have some crisis of faith. And I think I'm going to pop into their mind of, I remember working with TJ and he followed Jesus. And I remember he was different. And I remember like how much peace he had and the joy that he had and the fun that he was. I want to learn more about what he was worshiping or what he was following after. And in the world today with social media and like they still have my number, they still have my Instagram, like they can reach out to me, which is great. Like sometimes your evangelism is planting seeds years in advance and just knowing, hey, when they go through something, they will remember that I knew, cared about them, that I was willing to talk about anything that they wanted to talk about, that I wasn't judging them for what they were doing. I was just saying, hey, I'm not going to do that, but I understand why you are, so to speak. Yeah. So I just feel like people that even when I want what is best for them and they don't even necessarily want it, then my job is just to be someone who can show them that they're cared about as a person, that I love them, and that I'm going to just stay confident in what I do and why I do it. And I'm going to give them that balance of truth and love. So if you want truth, I'm here. Come ask me anything. I will tell you what you're doing wrong when you ask me lovingly. But at the same time, I'm also just going to demonstrate the different way to live. And if this is appealing, if my life looks appealing to you, then you know who to ask to how to figure out how did I get where I'm at. And then that's my chance to be like, okay, I don't do this, I don't do this, I don't do this because of this, and I fill it instead with this and this. And I just feel like when they can come with a curiosity and they know that you care about them, then that sets you up to be able to help them figure out those pieces that they're missing in their life.
I think that's something that's very missing, not just from our world today, but our church today.
I agree. Yeah,
I've seen,
sadly.
yeah, I have. It's sad, right? I've seen it in my
Mm-hmm.
life. You know me, I'm a talker. I will take over a conversation, and
Uh-huh.
regrettably so sometimes. But your default, and I know you're an introverted guy. Like that,
100%.
I
Yep.
remember learning this. in high school just serving with you, and I'm like, how can a pastor be? I don't know how a speaker can be introverted. It didn't make sense to me.
Yeah,
There's a part of it, it still doesn't quite add up by my own logic. But it was still, but most people, mine included, I've changed a little bit. I've started piecing it together. Their default is to talk, but it's their secondary to love and show that love. I like, even if what I'm saying is true, it does no good if it's not received. So I went to this thing, and one of the things that I learned was, hey, are you open to feedback? If you want
mm,
feedback, you have to be open to it. So if I'm gonna give feedback, and maybe I'm not as good as this as I should be, but it's like an attempt to be like, hey, are you open to feedback right now?
mm-hmm,
Open to, and feedback is, hey, I'm going to tell you how I see it. If you don't want to make the change, you don't got to make the change. If you do, great, but be
mm-hmm,
open to receiving some feedback about how, hey, this is just how I see it.
yeah,
But it can't, like, who's going to be open to feedback if they don't feel like it's coming from a good place or constructive place,
right,
loving place? Like, your default is to love.
yeah,
You you have an incredibly missionary mindset, is what and like I see it and how you behaved in the 5 years that I had you, the 4 years that I had you. But just hearing you talk about it, because there's a tension there. I'm glad you circled back to your work buddies, because you talked a little bit about it in the beginning of you were around people that weren't quite believers like that, and that you brought to church and that you were
mm,
just with. And it's so easy to get sucked into people that, and this is not necessarily a bad thing, that believe the same ways that you do, that love the same
mm,
way, think the same, believe, act. And it's good to be around a good Christian environment or Christian community. And it's a lot easier to not get sucked into those things if you're not, but you
yeah,
show up to work and you're the only Christian, you're the only believer there, especially as
mm-hmm,
strong of a believer as you were from a whole other planet, but still you weren't like, you didn't have an avoidance toward them. And it's
mm-hmm,
so easy to get in those environments of, hey, I'm the only like real believer here, especially as strong as you are. It's easy to have an avoidance. And I don't want to get sucked in by this. I don't want to
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
stumble and fall because I'm hanging around these guys. But instead, you were like, I'm still gonna talk and love you guys, if not more than these other Christian friends I may have. And I'm just gonna love you as my default. And when you have a question or when you want feedback, I'll hit you with the truth.
yeah.
But that loving default, just it's so missing. It's so missing. That's why you're a fresh of breath air.
Thanks. And I think part of it is temperament a little bit. I am an introvert, and I meet with a lot of youth pastors and just pastors, but there's not many introverted youth pastors. And there are times where I wish I was more extroverted. You were in my youth group. Like, we weren't the wildest, craziest youth group out there. We didn't have, sometimes I'm like, man, I wish I was better at just like the minute you walk in, I could hype up any. There's some of those youth pastors who like are so relational, like they could hype up any kid any minute. I'm scared of new kids still. I'm like, I got to make you think that I'm like at least cool enough that you'll listen to me, and I'm not that cool. So yeah,
Oh,
you think I am because you've been with me long enough, but I'm like, I'm a slow burn. A year in, you go, you know what? Is actually pretty cool, but it took 2 years, and that's okay. I know my sweet spot, but that is just how I'm wired. So I am more relational. I am more like just slow burn evangelistic. Like I am more live it out and then use words when necessary. And I think that does work great. I think there are some people though that are much more bold and talkative, and I think God uses both for sure. But I think the commonality has to be like you said, like we have to do it out of love. Even if you're a bold speaker, like then you just need to be really conscious of, have I built up enough relational equity in the bank that I can now start being bold? Because if you hit bold right off the gate, then you just come across as, I don't know, demeaning or whatever it would be. So I think, yeah, just learning your temperament, learning how well and how quickly you connect with people. We never have to shy away from the truth. You don't have to be like, oh, let me just never say anything about the Bible for a year just so that they think I'm cool, and then I'll surprise them that I like the Bible. I don't think that helps either. Like, I think you have to be genuine and you have to speak truth from day one, but you just have to also be conscious of, do I have enough credibility with this person that they're going to listen to me when I share that truth?
You're living out your faith, but our faith at its root is love. Because
Yeah,
God is
it
love.
should be.
Like
Yep.
you build a relationship with people because this is I had a class and it challenged me. I think I told you about this class. And one thing, and there's a couple things I'm still hesitant on. There's one thing I was challenged off the bat that I'm starting to see some starting to see some truth here. I'm starting to understand it a little bit better. And it was when people don't when like people can tell when you have an agenda, which that I
Hmm.
agreed with, but there's some other things that kind of followed that I wasn't quite certain on because I want to help people. I want to help people see Jesus and just that blend of love and truth. God is love. Like the person we're following, the figure that we're following, he is love. So if we're living out the commandments we're supposed to live out, living the ways that we're supposed to live, love is already the default.
Hmm.
The truth is just woven into that. And was Jesus very truthful? Yes, he was. He met
Right.
strangers and was truthful off the bat. An example that comes into my mind is the woman at the well.
Yep.
There
Yep.
was no like warm up. Hey, how are you doing? He goes, You've had X amount of husbands, and the one you're living with is not your husband.
Yep.
But like even then, you read it, and yes, incredibly direct because he also
Hmm.
has very limited time with people.
Yep.
Get the 2 years, the 5 years
Mm.
with the woman. In fact, his ministry in general was only three. That might
Exactly.
it's just yeah, like living, dude. You're a fantastic example of what it looks like to live for God's glory, and
Yeah. Well,
every aspect,
thanks.
not just, of course, living day to day life, but you've had to move around the nation for ministry. Obviously, the jump to Colorado and Nebraska are not they're not too far away. Going to Kentucky
Lexington was,
it had to feel like a jump.
I didn't even know where Kentucky was on a map. So, because my dad moved there when I was still in college. I'd never even been to Lexington until we came to interview for the job. I'd never visited. I was just like, oh yeah, my parents are somewhere like out east, but yeah. So never ever would have thought we would have been in Lexington, Kentucky. But I'm so glad we were.
Yeah. At least from my experience, and I know you talked about I had you for 5 years. I warmed up to you, this and this. Where most youth pastors, I've seen a lot of kids these days. There's a boost in anxiety, right? It's somebody that's a high level, high energetic guy like me that can spike that anxiety. It
It
really,
can, yeah, yeah,
if it's overdone or you're trying to get too buddy with them too quickly, too high energy with them too quickly, they're
yeah,
like,
yeah.
especially if they were not in an environment that if you're the first person, like if they've been in a pretty chill environment their whole lives, they see somebody like me. But you definitely brought a lot of calmness to what we did, like serving and watching you lead. I got a lot more calm. Like when I would lead after the sermon, when I would lead youth groups or even when you gave me the opportunity to preach, I think like looking back on it, like my preaching style became a little bit more calm, a little bit more down to earth. You're nodding.
For sure.
Is that what you
Yes,
experienced
yes, yeah.
from you?
Yeah, from your very first one to, I think you ended up doing three, I think, before you left. Yeah, each one got
Yeah,
a little more focused and calm, and
which
which was great.
that
I
comes
loved
from
watching you grow.
that comes from the first time I did it. I was 15. The last time you saw me do it, I was 18 or 19.
Yeah,
So a bit of age, but
heard
also
a
just
lot as well.
watching you. And
Yeah.
I got a lot more focused and a lot more calm with those students instead of obviously still relatable, obviously still me and just
Yeah.
energetic, but choosing to love on them a little bit differently.
Hmm.
I'll tell you this, my competitiveness went way down. Went
Yeah.
way down.
You
So
saw yourself. It was fun to watch. You grew from, I'm a high schooler here to serve you guys, to like leader, and this group is, when you were in middle school, like this group is for you and I'm here to make sure you guys have a great time. And it was fun to watch that growth for sure. And but the beauty of this is why I work with students. Nowhere else do you get to like legitimately spike on someone's head in nine square and then also get up and encourage them that Jesus loves them. And like you get to have both of those extremes, which is really fun.
Oh
So
yeah.
you just have to learn how to shift between the two. I
Yes.
think your first preaching was like the same nine square energy from stage. And but you, like I said, that's why we give you chances. And my first preaching was probably like the opposite. It was probably like little quiet TJ up there, like, why Jesus loves you. And like by the end, I was able to learn, hey, you can be a little more firm in even what you say from stage. You can offend people a little bit with the truth because they know who you are and they'll listen to you because you do a good job loving on them. But I even like when I go back, because the one positive of moving churches is you get to just keep reusing your old stuff because they haven't heard it yet. So I've got 5 years of curriculum already done. But I go back and it's so funny. I'll go back to a message that I had written 3 years ago in youth group. And I'm like, I'm going to do this one again. And then I'm like, end up rewriting half of it because it's, oh, I would say this way more confidently now. Or I think this was a little too, yeah, whatever. It's just funny to even see in your own, like, in your own maturity, go back 3 years to what you said, and you'd already be like, oh, I would do this way better now, or I would change this about it because I've learned more about how to be a better leader or how to communicate better. So
Absolutely. And it's just a blessing, isn't it? To
it's
see
the
that.
beauty of growth and learning is you're never done. And it's
Yeah.
fun to, I'll look back at this podcast 5 years from now and we'll both be like, wow, we could have said this way better, or we were so naive in this area because we're still on the process. We're still
Yeah.
learning.
I discourage people from looking at like my first five. It's so easy to look back at those with secondhand embarrassment. What was I thinking? But it's just a tribute to how much you've grown.
Yep,
To,
absolutely.
yeah, how much you developed and how much better you are. And it's a sign of, oh my gosh, how much better am I going to be one day? Knowing that I'm 20 and when I'm 30, like you are in a decade,
Yep,
and I'm gonna be like, oh my gosh, what was just
yep,
what did I do? What made me want to do this?
yep, yep. But what
No,
I love for like student ministry is like, even though that's how we'll all feel later, like sometimes that scares us away from doing anything yet because it feels like I got to be and like 100% ready before I start anything. And that's like my heart behind youth ministry is use your gifts now. Yeah, they're raw, they're still developing. Yeah, you're going to say some dumb things on stage because you're still a high schooler, but who cares? Just learn how to use your gifts now as a high schooler, knowing that they'll develop in the future. But yeah, I think for me, that's what maybe gave me that confidence in those teenage years for me was just like, I got the privilege to get to use my gifts now and see them already working in people's lives. And so that's just what I want to help students figure out is you don't have to wait till you're adult to learn where your gifts are and how to use them. Like you are equipped and the Holy Spirit will give you all that you need to be able to already do these things now. So just start figuring out like what is my role in my local church? What gifts has God given me? How can I use them now? Because the reality was whether your sermons and my sermons, whether mine was quote unquote better or more polished, I think the students listen to yours more because they loved hearing someone their age, someone who was willing to just get up there and risk it. And so I just always push students like, start using your gifts now. I want to help develop students' gifts right now. And then they'll keep developing them on later. And one day they'll be great podcast hosts. And I had nothing, quote unquote, to do with that, but just the fact of being like, I want you to just start figuring it out so that you've got your whole life ahead of you to keep developing the skills.
yeah, you live like that whole philosophy. It feeds into this philosophy of fearlessness. The way that I'm a big Kobe Bryant guy. The way
Yep.
that, yeah, the way that he defined fearlessness was just simply putting yourself out there and going for it. And a lot of people, they
Mm-hmm.
don't go all in, they don't go for it just because if you go all in and you fail, it's what does that say about you? Right?
Yeah. Yep.
What does that say about me if I put my heart and soul into this, I come up short?
Yeah.
And so fearlessness is just doing it in spite of I could have gotten up there. First time preaching, I was 15 years old. I could have gone up there. I do remember it wasn't my first sermon, but there was one sermon And I don't think you were here that week. I think you were gone or you were preaching in the big service or something.
Yeah.
And I remember I bombed it. I bombed it. Like legit. I went through like note by note. I like didn't do good with explaining. I ended like 15 minutes early. It was awful. And like easily could have been like my last sermon ever of I'm never doing this again. This was awful, but just the support that you had, and I know you weren't there, but even the support of the other people, the serving at the time, like the culture that we had, it was like, hey, at least it's okay. Look, this says nothing about you. Like you went up there, you were fearless, and you just went for it. And when you go out and be fearless, even when you fail, which inevitably just happens, there's so much you get to learn and develop. And the way that I felt in that sermon, I have not failed since. I definitely learned a lot more about how I can better prepare. Did not prepare enough for that sermon. Didn't.
Yep.
And I
Yep.
have not failed to prepare like that. I just made things so much better and so much easier.
Yeah.
So much to learn from those failures.
Hmm.
Just getting opportunities with guys, cool guys like you that hand them out like that and that are ready to just give those kids a chance.
Yeah, I think what really sparked it for me, like I always had that philosophy, but then I went to this youth pastors conference when I was in Colorado, and they had this speaker. I don't even remember his name, but his whole talk was like, instead of doing youth ministry, do youth's ministry. And it was this idea of the apostrophe S at the end of youth ministry. It's their ministry. You're just in charge of it, but like it's their group. So how can you help them have ownership? And if worship is not quite as polished, but you've got an all student led team, that's a better ministry than if you've got zero students on it and they just come and adults put things on for them.
Mhm.
Or, yeah, he was basically just really, if youth group is just, oh, these adults put on this cool hangout for us, then it's not youth ministry. So yeah, it was just like this apostrophe S talk. And like, it always stuck with me of, okay, as much as possible, doesn't mean adults can't be involved. Doesn't mean sometimes it's good to have things a little more polished, but is the heartbeat behind it. This was the student's decision to make it that way. And so I think that's why I love trying to figure out like those student leadership teams that we had created, like being like opportunities where it's, if you want voice into this ministry, there are avenues for you to have voice into what we do and how we do it. And sure, I've got my ideas, but at the end of the day, I want to make sure I've heard all of your ideas too.
Mhm.
And if you don't like my idea, then I got to not be offended. I got to be like, you know what? It's not, this ministry isn't about me, it's about students. So it's students ministry. And so yeah, I've always had that philosophy. And I remember that talk specifically, walking out of there being like, all right, I've got to like, I've got to hold everything open handed and be like, let students drive. It's their youth group. If I want them to know how to use their faith now, they've got to have opportunities to figure out how to use their faith now.
You did a really good job with that, with accepting feedback. Like when I think it's amazing when I think back on everything. I'm like, TJ, yeah, you really like you lived this. You
Good. I'm glad to hear that. It's always my hope.
Yeah, we really were allowed to lead more than really any other adult would have allowed us to lead. And even when we had feedback, you were never like, you're like some 15, 16-year-old kid, whatever. You were like, okay, you made this authentic. I want to understand and I want you to be heard and I want this to be the best that it can be. And you know them in a way that I don't. You understand it in a way that I don't. Like, let's maybe really think about this. You have an ability and a philosophy that like people feel heard and loved by you very much, and you bring such a soothing calmness to it. There's never been a time where I've questioned whether I should bring something up to you. Never. It's always been like, okay, I can send this to TJ. He's going to at least give it some acknowledgement. That's super cool to think about and just reflect on, and like how that can, like how I can better live that in my life. Which that's really what this whole podcast is for,
Yeah.
right? Living life better, living life for Jesus better. I think you give an amazing spin to it. You give an amazing spin in philosophy. And you may not even think it's because it's just something that you live and it's so simple. It's very
Yeah.
simple.
Yeah. I'm a
That's,
simple guy. So
you are.
I try and keep things simple. Simple's better for me. Like keep it to the basics and
And it works for you, man. It works very well. When you live your life the way that God made you to be and God's mission for you, you live it very well. And who knows how that continues to develop because again, people are like, oh, you're 30, you're old.
I'm not
But like,
quite the young, cool new youth pastor I have been every other time I've walked into a church so far.
but the reality is you're only 30. That's the reality. And so
Yeah.
who knows how you continue to develop and to continue to grow and continue to learn, like just do things even better than you already do. That's just such a cool perspective to have, and I wish more people had it.
Yeah.
Man, how much more could I do? The next best thing is always around the corner.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. TJ, it's been a pleasure. I've loved every minute of it. It's been great talking to you again. Man, I love every conversation, every time, without fail. It's always great to reconnect to you. I'm glad everything's going well. It's just been super awesome. Challenge wise for this week, how can we foster with a default of love? Fostering a default of love and throw in truth where we can,
Hmm.
where it's needed, where it's welcome. But above all, as much truth as the gospel is, it's even more so of love. This week, let's figure out ways that we can live from a standpoint of love, a default of love, and let the truth fall where it may be, and let the truth
Hmm.
fall where it can, and where it's received and welcome.
Yeah. I'll give you one more quote. I don't remember who said it, but someone else can Google it if you're inspired. But it was, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And I
That's
always think
cool.
that sticks with me really good. They don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Yeah, I've never heard that before. That's awesome.
Someone smarter than me said that, but I'll quote them.
There we go, man. Well, that's awesome, man. I love that. It's a great quote. TJ, man, it's been a pleasure as always, man.
Well,
You
thanks
are,
for the invite, man. It's good to reconnect. I'm super proud of you, and I'm still here for you, whatever you need. But I'm rooting you on and cheering you on. It's really cool to see you. Yeah, even from just 2 years ago, even over the last year, just to see you walk with a little more confidence this year, and that being even not golf related is cool. Obviously, you still love it and it's a passion of yours, but like you've got this confidence of God's got something, God's got purposes for me off the course just as much as he does on. And so to see you have that and be okay with that, of, you know what, this is something I love. And maybe this is the route I'm going. I'm just proud to see you walking wherever he leads. So
thank you, TJ. I appreciate it. That's amazing to hear. Thank you. I appreciate you, man. We gotta have you on here again at some point, I'm sure.
anytime, although I just used all my best stuff, so I better think through some,
That's the
better
cool thing.
fabricate some new stories of things that were cool. But
That's the cool thing about life. We continue to get new stories,
yeah, yeah.
new lessons learned. But yeah, TJ, just awesome talking to you again and having you on here and having this amazing conversation, my brother.
You as well, man. Love you and hit me up anytime. Good to talk to you again.
Yes, sir. Love you, buddy.
See you guys.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Living for His Glory. I had such an amazing time making it, and I really hope it connected and impacted you on a significant level. I love making and recording episodes like these. I truly believe that they fulfill the Living for His Glory mission, which is to help you break free of your worldly chains and step into the person that God has called you to be. I love you guys. I hope you guys got a lot out of this. I hope that it changes something about how you do this week. I hope you have a good day and a good week as we continue to get ready for next week's episode. Have a good day, guys, and I'll see you later.